Lisa, hello. Thank you for talking to me.
No worries.
Let's start with where you were born.
Cool. All right. I was born in South Africa in 1993, and I was born in Johannesburg. And when I was 5, I moved to New Zealand with my dad. And so it was just Dad and I. We started our lives in New Zealand. I've lived here ever since, so I'm pretty much a Kiwi, have a Kiwi passport. And
When you moved to Devonport, is that right?
Yeah. So I moved to Devonport when I was 5. I started going to school there. And Dad and I started out in New Zealand pretty much with nothing and built ourselves up. So my dad started working as a carpenter to pay the bills. He was a little bit overqualified for the New Zealand market. So he started his own business and started working with a lot of Asian immigrants on business plans. And then the government changed the laws, and my dad's business sort of started dropping by. And so we moved. He took up a new contract in Dunedin.
With all the snow?
With all the snow, yeah. And I got to know the snow pretty well. It was awesome. We used to go skidding down the hills on oven trays and things. It was great. And then the contract ended, and Dad and I moved back up to Auckland, and I started going to intermediate at North Cross on the North Shore. And then I went to Westlake Girls, and by this time my dad's partner and I weren't getting along very well. I was in my adolescent years and sort of trying to assert myself as an individual, and it wasn't going so well, so I got sent to boarding school. And I ended up at Sacred Heart Girls College in Hamilton. It's so far, it seems so far away now. Can't even say the words. There was an all Catholic girls high school, and there was 80 of us in the hostel, and we were all crazy. It was good fun. We used to play pranks on the matrons who used to look after us. We used to grab the Jesus statues and Mary statues and put them in their bedrooms, give them the fright of their lives. It was awesome fun. And so I finished high school there, and I sort of thought that I needed to do something meaningful with my freedom after school. I didn't want to go and travel the world just yet. I wasn't quite in that mindset. I wanted to go to university and study something that would make me feel like I had a place in the world. And I initially wanted to go to police college and become a policewoman. I'm so glad I didn't. So instead, my dad talked me into doing a Bachelor of Social Work, and I'm so glad I did. So I studied a Bachelor of Social Work for 4 years, and I graduated this April, just been. And that was a really incredible experience. I got to work with all factors of society. I got to work with homeless people, with police, with lawyers, judges, with drug addicts, alcohol addicts, all types. And that basically helped me see that there's, a lot to be perfected in New Zealand society. We're not quite the clean green image that we seem to portray to the rest of the world. And it kind of left me a little bit disenfranchised with the system, a little bit lost. I got quite upset about how I saw the people who were supposed to be caring for our most vulnerable people. Yeah, they weren't really doing that, in my opinion. So I was determined not to go into social work and become a social worker.
Is that because of the individuals they were, or because of the system that they were working in?
I think it's a systemic pressure that they were working under. I think a lot of these social workers and counsellors and therapists have an absolute, clear intention to help people and to, serve humanity. But I think the way that the system is, it puts so much pressure on, these therapists and these social workers so much that they aren't fully able to use their resources to the best use. There's more and more paperwork every day. There's surveys and stats and emails and phone calls and all these things coming at them all the time, so much that they can't really be with that person to the full extent. 30-minute appointments, they sit down, they get talking, they might have a cry, and then 30 minutes is up, time to go, sorry, yeah, I can see you're really upset, let's talk about it next week. And I just thought that's just so wrong. It was really, really heartbreaking to see, and I just didn't want to perpetuate that cycle by going into social work. So I thought, I'm going to use my qualification, but I'm going to change the system. And so by changing the system, I don't feel like I want to be completely involved in it. I want to create a new model and a new way of being, so that when the system fails, if ever, that my system or my resources, my tools will be there for many people to be caught before they hit complete rock bottom. So on that note, I've been working with disabilities, so disabled youth, since February this year. I find that a really, really, really meaningful path. I get to work with all different types of people with a range of disabilities. I get to work with people with spina bifida, with cerebral palsy, with autism, with Down syndrome, and also other intellectual disabilities like global delay. And because of the wide range of disabilities, the work is different every single day. A lot of these people that I work with don't quite know how to deal with their emotions or their physical needs, and therefore they turn to me for that help. And I find that a really, really meaningful way of being, but it also is very draining. I have to practice my self-care a lot, so I really enjoy doing yoga and eating lots of fresh fruit, vegetables. And
so working with these disabled youth, what does that actually mean? I mean, can you describe a sample session with one of them?
So at the moment I have a few different roles within disabilities. My main core business is working on a day program. It's focused around building life skills and emotional awareness through relationship building. So we sort of do things like dance and movement therapy or art therapy, or even things like veggie gardening or smoothie making. And that whole process, we're constantly working with them, diffusing or mediating arguments or blow-offs between people, or even just working with an individual themselves and their sensory issues. A lot of people I work with autism specifically have a lot of issues dealing with noise, taste, smell, sight, and they often can't process it themselves. They need help. So we sort of build on helping them to learn their own strategies and helping them remember what they have learnt to help themselves cope. So I'm not necessarily a teacher, I'm more of a facilitator, and that's where I'd rather be.
Cool.
Yeah.
And since you left, in fact, while you were at college, you were living in a community in Albany?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to stumble across a retreat village in Albany in Auckland, and I started living there not knowing what I'd got myself into. I pretty much had a very intense spiritual awakening while I was living there. I was surrounded by artists and musicians and very, very spiritually in tune people, and learned a lot about the land. I learned a lot about the earth, about the greater forces at play, a lot about me as well. I lived there for 2 years and it was awesome. We had yoga festivals, we had sacred earth festivals, we had travelling healers and teachers and workshops, we had community dinners on Monday nights, we had potlucks, we had jam sessions by the fire, we had drumming, all sorts. It was super fun, super cool.
So would you class yourself as a modern day hippie?
Well, what even is a hippie these days? So yeah, let's go modern day hippie.
So modern day hippie now living in Mount Eden.
Yeah, how did that happen? Bringing the hippie culture to Mount Eden.
And one of the reasons you moved here is because it's closer to your training?
Yeah, yeah. So I was lucky enough to stumble into a scholarship for circus. So now I'm at a circus school in Penrose. It's called the Dust Palace. It's a super cool organisation. It's currently run as a charitable trust, and they do circus performance as well as circus classes, and it helps a lot of really young girls, young women to build their confidence and their self, build themselves up really, and build strength and flexibility and become, their full potential. So I've been training with them for 3 months, and I'm hoping one day to be a circus performer, and to build myself as a performer as well as a social worker.
A performer in any particular discipline?
Yeah, well, I currently love playing around with hula hoops. I wouldn't call myself a hula hoop performer, but I hope to one day. I like to allow my hooping to just flow. I like hooping on the beach or hooping in the park, and if people like watching, then that's cool. If they don't want to watch, then that's cool too. But I'd love to also perform with aerials, on the aerial hoop, aerial silks, all those kinds of things. I'm still training, so I've got some time.
So do you think that physical improvement, working with your body in that way, helps you mentally as well?
Oh yes, absolutely. I truly believe that when your mind and your body are focused and connected, then it allows spirit to flow through, and spirit is the energy of everything. It's life force, it's chi, it's prana, and when your body is disconnected from your mind, that's disharmony, that's suffering, that's imbalance. That's what I see in our society everywhere. That's what I want to change. So in order for me to change that, I have to change myself. Yeah.
So what's the future for you? Is it as a circus performer? Is it as a therapist? Is it as I'm not sure, what?
Well, I would love to bridge those two main interests and, make them have a baby and build my own disability circus. That's 100% what I want to do. I'm currently working with a couple of Down syndrome boys who love hula hooping just as much as I do. So in the afternoons we pick up hoops and we go to the park, or we go to the gym. We do all sorts of things with the hoops, and we play, and we talk about what our circus tent is going to look like one day, and we talk about how we're going to sell the tickets. You must book now, Studio Circus, it's going to happen. Sorry guys, cricket's over for the day, Studio Circus is on now. All that kind of thing. So it's going to happen. I'm just allowing myself to train up a bit more and work a bit more solidly with these boys, and just see what sort of comes from that. But yeah, I think disabled people have huge potential, incredible potential, more so than society would ever know. And because they have a disability, it means that they then have energy in a different part of themselves that we might not have. So I'm keen to foster that and pull it out of them and allow them to grow and build it, so that they can spread that happiness and that joy that they have in themselves, and give that back to society and empower other people to do what they love doing. And so bridging that gap between the mind and the body is a huge thing for me at the moment. And I'm working on how to do that with disabilities, so as not to push them too far or not to harm them too early on, and work with their different physical capabilities and needs. So I see it one day. Yeah.
So where does all this compassion come from? I mean, you're very young. So, I mean, you came from South Africa at a very early age. You're with just your father. Mm-hmm. So your mother died when you were 2?
Yeah. My mum passed away when I was 2.5. She unfortunately got breast cancer. Apparently she had cancer even before I was born, so it was always going to be that way. Dad and I came to New Zealand, just him and I. And I think growing up for my first few years in South Africa really left a mark on me, in terms of growing that compassion and that heart for other people. I remember seeing beggars at the traffic lights. I remember seeing people with one leg asking for money, hobbling around. It was really, really sad. I remember seeing children and babies on the street, massive, massive, massive slums next to the airport, next to the motorway, just huge poverty, and it was really, really sad. But because South Africa has been like that for a long time, I felt everyone was kind of used to it, that was kind of normal and okay. And coming to New Zealand, seeing that we don't necessarily have a slum culture here, made me really understand that, okay, that level of poverty I saw in South Africa isn't normal and it isn't okay. And I've always sort of held that close to me, that, people suffer and the world is unfair and the world is unequal, but it doesn't have to be that way. I want to change that. I'm trying to change that every day. Yeah.
Amazing. And your experience with working in government agencies for placement has put you off, but have you thought of possibly approaching somebody in government to try and help develop an alternative way, but also within the system, rather than just outside?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been thinking of this, and I truly believe that everyone in society needs a form of healing. I think everyone has their own experience and their own density, so we're not all the same, not at all, but in some way or form all of us need some broader connection to everything else. And because of the rat race and because of money and being in debt and having the credit system, all of this stuff, it separates us from each other, and we forget what it is truly like to be connected to ourselves and to other people. I'm truly trying to build on that and build a system, or build an organisation that allows that connection, where money isn't a thing. Money doesn't even come into it. Where energy exchange is what's real. Money is just a form of energy, but we put so much weight onto it that it becomes its own thing and completely separates us from what's real. I want to completely disembark from that, and I believe one day the government will take on my model, but I want to build it so that it doesn't need the government, so that one day the government will be like, please, we need you.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick.